welcome to another segment of fucking story time. I have Womp Womp McSkittle Tits with me today,
I forgot
and
I
I'm gonna
changed.
tell her a story and see if she can discern who the killer might be before I reveal who the killer is. So,
I'm sure I
Amanda,
will.
if you don't mind saying hi to the handful of people that are listening to this, because this is on Patreon.
Hello. I forgot that my name was Want McSkittles Tits, by the way. I just left whatever it was before because all my settings were still in there. So hello. Um, it's good to be back. I feel like I'm home.
Good, good, good. I love having you on the show, so it's been amazing. You've had your own episode, you've been a part of Conspiracy Tuesdays a couple times.
Two
So
times.
yeah. And both times were awesome episodes, I feel like. So
Solid. Yeah. I love the Conspiracy Tuesdays.
yeah. And I appreciate you very much. I think for everybody listening, Amanda has become like a pretty good friend of mine, and I love her very much, and I care about her and her podcast and her growth a lot. So, any time that I can get her involved with my show, I'm gonna do so. So,
Yeah. I appreciate
uh,
that. And we
yeah, but
return the favor because you're hopping on ours in not too long here, so
yes, ma'am.
yeah.
So if you don't mind, real quick, letting everybody that may not know who you are, which is kind of crazy to me for nobody to know what One Nothing is. But if you don't mind, uh, cluing everybody in on who
Yeah.
you are, what you do, and where they can find you.
Absolutely. Well, I hunt serial killers by day. So no, I'm just kidding. I am one of three very enigmatic hosts of One Nothing podcast, and we are a no holds barred true crime slash animal attack centric based podcast where we share true stories of weird, crazy ways people have died and talk about what they may or may not have done to cause such attack or death. So yeah, we've been doing that for just over a year now. I have David, my other co-host, the Duke of Darkness, aka Down the Rabbit Hole, who just hit his own milestones and his own personal feats. So congrats to him. And then my other co-host, Rachel, who is on rotating appearance. Um, don't say anything because I know what you're thinking. She does show up every now and then for episodes.
Are you
But
sure?
yeah,
When was
I'm
the last
sure.
time she showed up?
She does most of the Patreon ones that we did,
Oh,
so
okay.
yeah, she's most of the ones she does
Except for
aren't
mine.
available to everyone, so except for yours. So
Yeah,
not
she
not
doesn't
to
like
her
me.
happiness. Yeah, that's yeah. Don't make me out her in front of all these people.
All these five people.
All these people. But yeah, we have a good time and we learn a lot about, animals and different, industrial kind of things and just a broad variety of interesting things that interest us, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say like because I got hooked onto your show early on before I ever even spoke to you. Um, so and I listened to I think you only had like 5 episodes at the time, and I
Yeah.
listened to all 5 of them in one day. Because I really liked it. I really liked your personality. And Rachel was more involved in the beginning, so it was cool to listen to. The banter between, but with David too, it's become really good as well.
Oh, I
And
appreciate that.
I noticed since I've been listening since the beginning, like I notice your growth and you becoming your own like force to be reckoned with, I would say.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I definitely would agree. I've, just learned a lot about podcasting in general and learned a lot from people like you too that I listen to regularly and make a habit out of tuning into and just seeing the way that you guys yourself and our other podcasting friends kind of carry themselves and how they represent their show and even things to how you advertise and interact with your followers. I've just learned a lot from observing all of our close little circle. So that has definitely helped our growth tenfold.
For sure. For sure. And it helps to have somebody as a co-host that freaking somehow reaches 1,000,000 people, a thousand
Yeah,
million.
does not hurt.
That does not hurt.
Yeah,
I don't know how the hell he does it, but he does it,
just
and
that
he
infectious personality, man. It's
that's
everybody's
true. He's
drawn to it. I don't know what it
yeah
is. I'm a
yeah
little envious at times because I'm like, There's someone else in One Nothing. It's not just David, but it's good that he gets a lot of recognition for the kind-hearted person that he is. So that's good.
Absolutely, absolutely. And David early on, for people that don't know, I didn't know who the fuck he was either, and he started talking to me randomly here and there, early on during my show, and I didn't know what he even looked like because he didn't ever posted any pictures of himself or anything, and I'm like, who the fuck is this guy?
In
And
the
then he's like, hey
shadows.
man, I love your show, but I don't agree with your politics. I'm like, that's okay, man. And then we just became a friendship blossomed, and I love the guy now. So
Bromance.
yeah, any chance I get can get him involved too. And the cool thing about him though is like at a drop of a hat, like I had somebody that couldn't make a conspiracy Tuesday, and I was like, David, I had somebody last minute not like make it. I was like, would you be interested? He's like, when? I was like, it's like 2 hours from now. He's like, I'm there, and I was like,
Jumped
fucking
in.
dope. So
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah, that's the kind of guy
But
he is. Just there to help
absolutely.
whoever he can, and it's really awesome to have somebody like that, just as like a partner and through this podcast thing too, because it's easy to get dragged down into the bog when all your episodes are about people dying in these horrible ways. It's easy to kind of fall into that negative mindset. So having someone on there who doesn't let me makes a world of difference in how I can continue doing episodes without bumming everybody out. So
Absolutely. Um, so I'm gonna ask you just like a couple quick questions before we get into the story, just so people can get to know you a little bit more. But
okay.
what made you want to start the podcast? Like, what was that confirming moment? Like, I'm gonna start this podcast right now.
So I just really was bored and I had just fallen into podcasts. I actually, embarrassingly enough, my first podcast I ever listened to was like a self-help podcast. Then I started branching out from there into like true crime, which is completely contradictory, I know, but that's where my little journey went. And so I listened to a few crime pods and listened to a couple like animal attack based podcasts. And they were really great stories, but I finished their library and I had that sense of loss, like I had nothing left. Like I listened to all the stuff I wanted to hear, but I didn't want that to end. And so I just thought maybe if I made my own podcast, I could continue do stories on topics that I want to learn about, and then maybe someone else would kind of have that same draw towards the content like I had with the podcasts that I listened to originally. And if not, then at least I was still learning things about a topic that I was interested in myself. So that's where the podcast was born, was just a desire to want to keep that feeling of kind of finding this new hobby, but running out of content from the people who I was already listening to. And I wasn't in the circle of podcasts that I am now, so I don't have that problem of not having enough shows to listen to anymore. That was a very amateur problem that I only had very briefly. Now I have the opposite problem where I have so many great shows, it's impossible to keep up with all of them. So it's been a real blessing that I took the journey that I did, because I would never have met you. I never would have met David. Rachel and I have grown closer through the show, so it's really been a blessing to my social life.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. Um, I because I think the group that we have of other podcasts they're all amazing in their own way. And I fucking, dude, like you said, I have such a hard time now keeping up with
Yeah.
everybody. Because, I had my favorite shows beforehand. I had a handful of
Yep.
shows that I listened to weekly. And now I'm falling behind on those ones because I want to support my friends.
Yeah. It's
But
hard.
which isn't a bad thing. And I mean, working 10 to 12, sometimes 14 hours a day driving truck. It's a little bit easier for me, I'd say, than it would be for you. But sometimes, like, I'll be sitting there and I'll have my headphones on and be like, God, I gotta take these off for a little while. So I'm like sitting
Yeah.
there for
It
hours
gets
with headphones on my head, and then I come home to record with somebody for my show, and I put
put them
headphones
back
on my
on.
head
Yeah, it's a lot.
because I don't do earbuds. I do actual headphones, even
Yeah.
like at the gym and all that shit. So,
They're more comfortable.
um,
I have tiny ears, so I don't like me and earbuds don't get along.
you have small ear holes.
I do have small ear holes.
So what brought you from Canada to the US?
Douchebag men and my mom's thirst to be married.
Oh, okay.
If you want honesty. But yeah, my mom remarried to a guy that had originally lived in Ohio but moved to Florida, where my mom met him while we were on vacation with my biological father. It's a whole Jerry Springer episode. And
Oh,
then,
shit.
yeah, so then he moved to Canada with my family because we were all Canadian citizens. And then he found a job in his hometown of Akron in Ohio. And so we moved to Ohio. And then once we were over the border and kind of like under his thumb, he turned into a different person. And then my mom and him got divorced, and we just kind of stayed here as like consolation prizes, I guess. So here we are. It's not been terrible. It's not been, I mean, honestly, it's made my life what it is. I can't imagine where I would be otherwise. I
Yep.
fell into so many paths that I don't know that I would have fallen into had I stayed in Canada. So it definitely was not a mistake. I don't know that it's a blessing because I don't know what the alternative me would have looked like right now. But I sure know that Canada doesn't have warm tropical beaches. So I did something right
That's
by
true.
moving
That's true.
here.
I would say if I could own a house or just something that I could walk out either onto a beach
Mm,
or onto a lake would be the fucking best.
that is the
I would be
dream.
so happy just looking at
Yeah.
water, you
It
know.
absolutely, yeah. That's the goal. And then like privacy though, not just like a public beach, but like a little place that's just yours, that you can rely on being alone. That's where it comes down to.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. Um, but anywho, so I have a pretty interesting story. It actually comes from my home state.
Ooh.
Even in my area of southern Maine.
Oh.
So, all right, I wrote this out. So let's see if I can read it better than the last story time because I kept losing my fucking place as I read it.
Welcome to
Um,
my world. Now you know I turn my camera off when I read.
all right. So, Diane Jenkins awoke on October 22nd, 2001, with a strange feeling. She hadn't heard from her daughter after she had a night out on the town. Her daughter Amy was not one to make people worry, and her mother, you know, talked constantly. Which I think when you have these missing people um, stories, though a lot of this stuff happens, and that's how they and the investigations start quicker, is when you have somebody that you're talking to on a daily
Consistently,
basis,
yeah.
as we found out with your recent sickness.
Sure did.
Um, so like I said, Amy always calls her mother, especially after a night out on the town. After Amy, and then Diane would call Amy. This was before cell phones, so she was calling her house landline. I mean, there were cell phones in 2001, but it wasn't like today. Um, so she would call, and she didn't get an answer, so she called Amy's work and would find out that Amy didn't show up for work that day. Um, and she didn't call her work to call out that day and explain why she wasn't coming in or anything. So Diane immediately called police to report her daughter missing. And then like literally that same day, her family and friends started posting missing posters all over the place. Amy was actually born in March 12th, 1976, in New Hampshire to Dennis St. Laurent and Diane Jenkins. From New Hampshire, her family would move to Portland, Maine. After graduating from South Portland High School in '94, Amy opted to join the workforce rather than attending college. In '96, she began working as a third shift assembler at Pratt and Whitney in North Berwick. Now, Pratt and Whitney is an American aerospace manufacturer that designs, manufactures, and services aircraft engines and auxiliary power units. Their
Okay.
engines are used for both military and civilian aircrafts. They are a global leader in propulsion systems, powering the most advanced aircrafts in the world. And that's a big company for this area. Like a lot of people go to work there, and you know, what's the word? The onboarding jobs are usually like third shifts, so you're working overnights mostly when you first get there, and then you work yourself up, unless you already like have um, knowledge for, a better position.
Sure.
So after she obtained her job, she would move to South Berwick, Maine to be closer to her job. So she was in Portland, traveling to North Berwick, which is about an hour, maybe
Ooh,
a
yeah,
little bit
girl.
more.
Save on that
Yeah.
travel cost.
So South Berwick is literally like 15 minutes from, like literally any part of South Berwick is about 15 minutes from Pratt and Whitney. Um, so she moved into an apartment with her cat Alex and her boyfriend Richard Sparrow. So like I thought you would be perfect for this story. As
Mm.
soon as I heard the story and I was like, I'm gonna tell the story. I was like, I'm gonna tell it to Amanda. Um,
You
so
picked well because it's very, like I said, drawing a lot of parallels. Just very, it's weird. It's weird.
dope. So Eric was a motorcycle enthusiast, sorry, and a former rugby player. So this guy was, pretty solid. He would take Amy for a bike ride, and then the two would sit together on the beach of Sanibel Island. Sanibel Island. Is that how you say it?
Sanibel. Yeah.
Sanibel.
So weird.
Eric was actually completely enamored with Amy, and he was captivated by her personality as well as her looks, and she apparently did not feel the same. Not willing to commit to a new steady relationship just a few months after her long-term relationship ended, and they also lived 1,500 miles apart. So she was like, "Meh."
15,000. He's
Yeah.
on Mars.
He's like, she's like, fuck, dude, like, I don't want to get tied down. I just want
Yeah,
to fucking have fun. Like, that
I feel
from a
that.
lot of her friends, that's how she's like, at this moment in her life, she just wanted to live. She didn't want to
Yeah.
be fucking
I
put
mean, it
in
makes
a
sense though,
box.
because she spent 5 years with a guy who kind of seemed, sedentary. So it makes sense that she's utilizing her wings now that she kind of, has that ability.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, but just a few days after Amy returned home, Eric began calling, emailing, asking if he could come visit. Reluctantly agreeing, Eric would arrive to Portland on Thursday, October 18th. Eric had arrived with the thoughts of romance, but upon his arrival, Eric would learn that Amy's ex, Richard, would also be staying there
The
while Eric
pirate?
was in town. The pirate. So Amy had asked Richard to stay in order to deter Eric from making any kind of move. She didn't want no hanky panky or Eric even
Hmm.
trying to slide in her, um, you know, upper nighty. So she definitely didn't want him to make any moves on her. And Amy and Richard remained, close, even though the two were no longer romantically involved. And Richard also would often say, like, she was a fantastic person. She's just like, I just wasn't her person.
Yeah.
This concludes our broadcast day. Click.
Because in the end, none of us have very long on this earth. Life is fleeting. And if you're ever distressed, cast your eyes to the summer sky. When the stars are strung across the velvety night, and when a shooting star streaks through the blackness, turning night into day, make a wish.